Drawing angles in standard position. So this is at the very bottom of the third page of notes. All right, so in your notes, I want you to add next to initial side. The initial side is always on the positive x-axis, never moves. And I want you to add that the vertex for your angles at 0, 0. We have angles that open, we have positive angles and negative angles. And it's positive, you open counterclockwise. If it's negative, we open clockwise. So there you see the two, well, in the first graph, the red angle is the positive angle. Right? It is opening counterclockwise. The green angle is the negative angle. It's opening clockwise. And on the other graph, we have this time it's the red angle is the negative angle. And the green one is the positive, right? So if you're opening clockwise, you're negative. If you're opening counterclockwise, you're positive. Right? Let's take a look at drawing angles in standard position, the way they're supposed to go. Right? And first of all, let's look at this. Before we do that, in your notes, you have this particular slide. As soon as the slide changes, there we go. When trig functions are positive and negative. Right? So it totally depends on the signs in the quadrant. But I have a little mnemonic device to help you remember. Right, so remember, we have three different parts to our angles, to all of our angles. We have the horizontal, which is x. We have the vertical, which is y. And we have the hypotenuse opposite the right angle, which is r. Right? So our radius. Right? So in the first quad, r is always positive. Right? That's a distance, always positive, like the radius of a circle. And x and y are also positive. That makes all 6 of our trig functions, sine, cosecant, cosine, secant, tangent, and cotangent, are all positive. In your notes in the first quadrant, put x and y under the 2 positives there, and also put all 6 are positive. Right? Put exactly what you see. And put r is always right. Oh, excuse me. It may be right, but it's always positive. R is always positive. In the second quadrant, right? And it probably will be helpful if you write down what values you use for each of them, especially for our negative ones in the second, third, and fourth quadrant. So next to sine and cosecant, sine uses y over r, cosecant uses r over y, cosine uses x over r, secant uses r over x, tangent uses y over x, and cotangent uses x over y. And in the second quadrant, x is negative and y is positive. So all of the trig functions that use x are negative. Right? So you can see the 4 of them there. Cosine, secant, tangent, cotangent, they are negative. The 2 positives are sine and its reciprocal, which is cosecant. So notice, I want you to add all the things you see in the second quadrant to your notes. And I want you to write the word students. Notice students starts with s, and so does the principal trig function, trig ratio that is positive here, which is sine. Right? So sine starts with s, and student starts with s. So write students and write sine and cosecant are positive. In the third quadrant, x and y are negative. Right? So sine and cosecant, which uses y over r and r over y. Cosine and secant, which uses x over r and r over x, are all negative, right? Because they use 1 positive and 1 negative value. Cotangent and tangent, however, use x and y, and both of them are negative, and the negatives will cancel each other out. In the third quadrant, I want you to write the word take. Take starts with t, and so does the principal trig ratio that is positive in the third quadrant, which is tangent. Right? So tangent and cotangent are positive, and write the word take. And in the fourth quadrant, right, x is positive, y is negative. So that means that sine and cosecant, which uses y over r and r over y, and tangent and cotangent, which uses y over x and x over y, are going to be negative because they use the y. Right? Any of the trig functions that use y are going to be negative. But cosine and secant, who use x and r, they're positive. Calculus starts with a c. So does cosine. Right? And that's the principal trig ratio. Its reciprocal is secant. They are positive. So notice, if we look here, we have a way you can remember which ones are positive. All students, sine and cosecant, take, tangent and cotangent, calculus, cosine and secant. So I hope that helps you remember who's positive and who's negative in the 4 different quadrants, and I hope you take calculus. Let's take a look at graphing angles in standard position. Right, and so you have this one in your notes, and if you want, you can add this one on the same quadrant, oops, wherever it comes in. I have 3 more over here. You can add them on that same graph, not same quadrant, same graph, if they fit in, if you like. All right, so let's graph these ones. All right, so to draw an angle in standard position, our initial side here never moves. The vertex never moves. And you just want to put it in the right quadrant. Notice it's not important that this is on graph paper. It's not important that I have any numbers at all, because we're not looking at a specific position, we're looking at the amount of turn. It should be in the right quadrant and roughly in the right area. If you're not 100% perfect, and that's fine, but do the best you can. All right, so our first one is in the first quadrant, because I'd have to go 90 degrees to get out of the first quadrant. And this would be 45 degrees. It splits that first quadrant in half. It is a positive angle, so it's going to open counterclockwise. If we can squeeze in one more in the first quadrant, we have a slightly smaller angle, which is going to be 1/3 of the way, and that is our 30-degree angle here. Same initial side. This time it only goes 30 degrees. Let's get out of the first quadrant because it's getting very full in there. 480. Well, that angle is going to go a whole circle around, because 1 revolution equals 360 degrees. So it's going to go 360 degrees. So it's not done. It still has to go another 120. So this would be 90 degrees. So it's got to go 30 more degrees. It's going to go 1/3 of the way here. It's in the second quadrant. It's a positive angle, so it does open counterclockwise. Right? The angle went counterclockwise. And so this would be 480 degrees. And then the last one, -120. Right? Now that one is a negative angle, so that's going to open counterclockwise. Clockwise. Right? And now that's going to go, well, this much would be 90 degrees. Right? It's got to go 30 more degrees. So it's going to go 1/3 of the way into the third quadrant. And there we go. -120. Right? If you got space, you can add the ones I'm going to add in on the next page. Right? Seems like we have lots of space in the fourth quadrant. There's nobody there right now. Let's draw a couple more. All right, so we're going to draw an angle with the given measure in standard position. -60 degrees. Okay, that's going to open counterclockwise. So I keep doing that, clockwise. All right, so here's our initial side. And 60 degrees would be 2/3 of the way. And there we go. There we have a -60 degree angle. And again, vertex is at 0, 0. -405, another negative angle. Right? It is going to go around the circle 360 degrees. Right? And then it still has to go another 45 degrees. So it's going to go halfway. Not quite as far as the other angle went. There we go. That one there is -405 degrees. That's what that looks like. And finally, we have a positive angle. Let's kind of squeeze this one in. Also going a couple times around the circle, 420 degrees. So it's going to go all the way around. It's going the positive direction. That's 360. So it's still got 60 more degrees to go. So it's going to go right there, 2/3 of the way. And there we go. There is 420 degrees. All right, so that is all there is to graphing angles in standard position. The initial side never moves, and you need to figure out which quadrant you're going to be in. If you go that many degrees, that's where the terminal side will go. So I should probably label these. This is the terminal side for 420 degrees. This is the terminal side for -405, and this was the terminal side for -60. Okay. So that's all there is to graphing angles in degrees. Right, so we're going to have to learn, though, another way to measure before we can graph in anything else but angles in degrees. Right, so I'm going to end this podcast and I'm going to start the next one. Right, bye for now.